Why do some people rise at 5 a.m. without struggle, while others can't find the will to start even what they desperately want? Why do some endure pain that would break most, while others crumble at the slightest discomfort? The mystery isn't willpower. It's something far more primal, far more human. What if I told you that discipline isn't something you build through punishment or reward, but something that emerges naturally when you discover what the Holocaust survivors knew in their darkest hours? The most disciplined minds throughout history weren't necessarily the strongest. They were the ones who understood a profound truth about human nature that modern psychology is only beginning to comprehend. This insight, buried in the rubble of concentration camps and unearthed by a man who survived the unthinkable, could transform your resistance into resonance, your struggle into flow. Stay with me for the next 25 minutes. What you're about to learn changed everything for me, and I promise it will change everything for you too. The difference between forcing yourself to do something and being pulled toward it naturally is the difference between pushing a boulder uphill and watching it roll down. One depletes you, the other energizes you. This is the secret of true discipline. In our modern world obsessed with productivity hacks and morning routines, we've lost sight of the fundamental principle that makes discipline not just sustainable, but inevitable. We chase motivation like a drug, wondering why it abandons us precisely when we need it most. To understand this principle, we must turn to a man who faced the ultimate test of human endurance, Viktor Frankl. In 1942, Viktor Frankl, an Austrian neurologist and psychiatrist with a promising career, was arrested along with his pregnant wife, parents and brother. They were transported to the Theresienstadt concentration camp. By the end of World War II, only Viktor would survive among them. His pregnant wife, their unborn child, his parents and his brother all perished in the camps. In Auschwitz and later in Dachau, Frankl witnessed how some prisoners maintained their inner dignity and even helped others despite starvation, torture, and the constant threat of death. Meanwhile, others surrendered to despair, betrayed fellow prisoners for small favors, or lost their will to live entirely. What made the difference? It wasn't physical strength. It wasn't positive thinking. It wasn't even hope for survival. It was meaning. Frankl observed that those who could connect their suffering to a purpose, those who found meaning even in their torment, displayed resilience. That seemed superhuman. A father staying alive to reunite with his child, a scientist preserving his research in his memory for future generations, a caretaker helping fellow prisoners maintain their humanity. From this crucible of suffering, Frankl emerged with a revolutionary approach to psychology called logotherapy, from the Greek word logos, meaning meaning. Its central premise, the primary motivational force in humans is not pleasure, as Freud suggested, or power, as Adler proposed, but the discovery and pursuit of what one finds meaningful. He who has a why to live can bear almost any how, Frankl wrote, quoting Nietzsche. This insight became the foundation of Frankl's masterpiece, Man's Search for Meaning, a book that would go on to sell over 16 million copies and be listed as one of the 10 most influential books in America. What does this have to do with discipline? Everything. Frankl's observations reveal that discipline isn't primarily about forcing yourself to do what you don't want to do. It's about connecting your actions to something so meaningful that the question of want becomes irrelevant, replaced by a deeper sense of necessity and purpose. When you understand this principle, you realize that struggling with discipline isn't a character flaw, it's a crisis of meaning. The activities you procrastinate on, the habits you can't maintain, the goals you abandon, these aren't failures of willpower, but disconnections from purpose. And this is where everything changes. Because while willpower is finite and fickle, meaning is renewable and resilient. It's the inexhaustible fuel for sustainable discipline, not just for a day or a week, but for a lifetime. If you're feeling the weight of this insight, if you're sensing that it might transform how you approach your challenges, subscribe now to journey deeper into Frankl's wisdom and discover how to apply this principle to your daily life. This content and the others are like real therapy sessions. Don't miss them. Subscribe to the channel, Activate the bell so you don't miss your next visit to your psychologist, who will be grateful for your like. Comment "cure" below if that's your goal and send it to that dear person who also needs to address their emotions. Let me share something profound about how meaning transforms discipline through a simple story Frankl often told. Imagine two bricklayers working side by side on a cathedral in medieval times. A passerby asks each what they're doing. The first responds wearily, "I'm laying bricks day after day." The second looks up with bright eyes and says, "I'm building a cathedral that will stand for 1,000 years. Physically, they're performing identical tasks. Psychologically, they're worlds apart. The first endures his work, the second is energized by it. The first counts minutes, the second builds monuments. The first requires discipline to continue. The second can hardly imagine stopping. This parable illustrates what Frankl discovered in the concentration camps. Meaning doesn't just make suffering bearable, it transforms our relationship with effort itself. Now, let's apply this to your life. Consider the activities where you struggle with discipline. The morning exercise you know would benefit you, but you can't seem to maintain. The creative project you're passionate about, but somehow never prioritize. The healthy habits you start with enthusiasm only to abandon within weeks. What's missing isn't some magical wellspring of willpower, it's the cathedral. When we connect these activities to something more profound than immediate outcomes or abstract benefits, discipline becomes less about forcing yourself and more about expressing what matters most to you. Frankl identified 3 primary sources of meaning that can transform your relationship with discipline. First, creating work or doing deeds. When you see your work, whether it's parenting, creating art, building a business, or serving others, as a unique contribution that only you can make, discipline naturally follows. It's no longer about completing tasks, but fulfilling your purpose. Consider the story of a former patient of Frankl's, a high-ranking diplomat who struggled with chronic procrastination. Traditional therapy focused on his childhood and psychological blocks had failed him. Frankl took a different approach, asking not what was wrong with him, but what mission remained unfulfilled in his life. The diplomat realized his true calling was to share the wisdom he'd gained through decades of international service. Once he began writing his memoirs, not for fame or legacy, but as a gift to future diplomats, his procrastination disappeared. The meaning he found in sharing his unique knowledge transformed his relationship with work entirely. The second source of meaning, experiencing something or encountering someone. This includes our relationships, our appreciation of beauty, truth, and goodness, and our capacity for love. A striking example comes from Frankl's own experience in the camps. One morning, exhausted and marching to work in the freezing dawn, Frankl found himself thinking of his wife. Though he didn't know if she was alive, she wasn't, he experienced a profound realization. He wrote, "A thought transfixed me. For the first time in my life, I saw the truth as it is set into song by so many poets, proclaimed as the final wisdom by so many thinkers. The truth that love is the ultimate and the highest goal to which man can aspire." In that moment, Frankl transcended his circumstances through the meaning he found in love. Though physically imprisoned, he experienced a freedom that his captors couldn't touch. When we connect our disciplines, whether physical training, intellectual growth, or creative practice, to the relationships and experiences they enable, they become expressions of love rather than acts of will. The third source of meaning, the attitude we take toward unavoidable suffering. This is perhaps Frankl's most radical insight. Even when we cannot change our circumstances, we retain the freedom to choose our response to them. Consider the case of a paralyzed pianist Frankl once counseled. Unable to play again, this man had lost all will to live. Frankl didn't offer false hope or positive thinking. Instead, he asked, "What if your suffering became the instrument through which you played your greatest composition?" Gradually, this man transformed his relationship with his condition. He began teaching music to underprivileged children who could never afford lessons otherwise. His discipline in rehabilitation wasn't motivated by false hope of recovery, but by the meaning he found in serving others through his unique understanding of both music and suffering. This principle applies even to the most mundane disciplines. The parent who rises early isn't just getting up. They're creating sacred moments of quiet that make them more present for their children. The student studying isn't just preparing for a test. They're honoring the privilege of education denied to so many throughout history. When discipline is connected to meaning, the question changes from "how do I force myself to do this?" to "how could I not do this given what it means to me?" But there's a crucial warning here. In our age of endless distraction and instant gratification, we face what Frankl called an existential vacuum, a widespread feeling of meaninglessness that manifests as boredom, depression, addiction, and aggression. Without meaning, discipline becomes unsustainable, because why endure discomfort for no purpose? This explains why so many of us fail, despite our best intentions. We try to build discipline on shifting sands, external motivation, social pressure, or temporary enthusiasm, rather than on the bedrock of personal meaning. If what I'm saying resonates with you, if you feel that connecting with deeper purpose might transform your relationship with discipline, subscribe now and activate notifications. Together we'll explore how to apply Viktor Frankl's profound wisdom to break through the barriers that have held you back for too long. Now let's translate Frankl's profound insights into practical steps for building unshakable discipline through meaning. I'm going to share a framework I call purpose-centered discipline that has transformed not only my life, but the lives of thousands who have applied it. First, we must recognize a crucial distinction. Traditional approaches to discipline focus on the how, techniques, habits, and willpower. Frankl's approach focuses first on the why, the meaning that makes discipline not just possible, but natural. Let me illustrate with a story from my own experience. For years, I struggled to maintain a consistent meditation practice despite knowing its benefits. I'd start with enthusiasm, then gradually abandon it as other priorities took precedence. The turning point came not from finding a better technique or scheduling system, but from connecting meditation to something deeply meaningful to me, being fully present with my family. When I realized that meditation wasn't just about personal wellness, but about developing the capacity to truly see and hear the people I love most, to be fully there for moments that would never come again, my relationship with the practice transformed completely. What had been a struggle became a sacred ritual. My discipline wasn't perfect, but it was profoundly different, emerging from purpose rather than imposed by will. This transformation is available to you through the following 4-step process derived from Frankl's work. Step 1. Meaning archaeology. Begin by examining the activities where you struggle with discipline. Rather than focusing on the activity itself, dig deeper to uncover what Frankl called the will to meaning that might connect to it. Ask yourself, if I maintained this discipline perfectly for a year, what would it enable in my life that I deeply value? How does this activity connect to my contribution to others? What suffering might this discipline help me transform into purpose? The key insight. Discipline struggles often signify not laziness, but a disconnection between your actions and your deeper purposes. Patient of Frankl's, a successful executive who couldn't maintain a healthy lifestyle despite multiple heart scares, discovered through this process that his health wasn't just about longevity, but about being present for his grandchildren's future. This connection to purpose, being the grandfather who teaches his grandchildren to fish rather than the one they only know from photographs, transformed his relationship with exercise and nutrition completely. Step 2. Purpose articulation. Once you've identified the meaning connection, articulate it in language that resonates emotionally. This isn't about creating a clever slogan, but about finding words that connect your daily actions to your deepest values. For example, this workout isn't just exercise, it's building the strength I need to show up fully for the people who depend on me. This hour of focused work isn't just productivity, it's my unique contribution that no one else can make. These moments of rest aren't laziness, they're honoring the wholeness that makes all my other contributions possible. The key insight. The language we use either reinforces the burden of discipline or reveals its hidden meaning. Frankl noted that the prisoners who survived often spoke differently about their experiences, not minimizing their suffering, but framing it within a larger narrative of purpose. Similarly, when we articulate the meaning behind our disciplines, we transform them from obligations into expressions of our deepest selves. Step 3. Environmental design for meaning reinforcement. Once you've connected discipline to meaning, design your environment to constantly reinforce this connection. This goes beyond typical habit triggers to create what Frankl might call meaning reminders. For instance, the executive mentioned earlier placed photos of his grandchildren next to his running shoes. A writer struggling with consistent practice placed her grandfather's letters, reminding her of the family stories only she could preserve, on her desk. A medical student overwhelmed by study demands kept a journal of patient interactions that reminded him why each piece of knowledge mattered. The key insight: your environment either connects you to or disconnects you from the meaning behind your disciplines. This principle was evident even in the concentration camps, where Frankl observed that prisoners who maintained small rituals, straightening their area, helping others, maintaining cleanliness when possible, were preserving not just routines, but connections to meaning and dignity. Step 4. Community of meaning. Finally, surround yourself with people who reinforce rather than undermine the connection between your disciplines and their deeper purpose. This isn't about finding cheerleaders, but about creating relationships that nurture meaning. Frankl emphasized that meaning often emerges through our connections to others, whether in direct relationship or in service to a larger community. When our disciplines are connected to shared values and purposes, they become expressions of belonging rather than isolated efforts. This might look like finding a workout partner who shares not just your fitness goals, but your deeper reasons for pursuing health. Joining a creative community that values not just productivity, but authentic expression. Creating accountability that focuses on purpose fulfillment rather than just task completion. The key insight: discipline sustained in isolation often falters. Discipline connected to communal meaning tends to endure. Now here's where Frankl's approach reveals something revolutionary. When discipline emerges from meaning, failure looks completely different. Rather than experiencing shame or self-judgment, when you miss a day, you experience a gentle pullback toward what matters, like being reminded of someone you love rather than being punished for a mistake. This transforms the psychology of habit formation entirely. Instead of the traditional cycle of enthusiasm, failure, shame, and abandonment, you create a resilient pattern of meaning, action, occasional disconnection, and natural return. But there's an even more profound shift that occurs. When discipline is grounded in meaning, it stops being something you do and becomes something you are. The distinction between want to and have to dissolves in the deeper reality of meant to. Consider how this applies to the challenge you're facing right now, that area where discipline has eluded you despite your best efforts. What if the missing element isn't technique or willpower, but connection to what matters most to you? What if 25 minutes of exploring that connection could indeed transform your discipline forever? If these ideas are expanding your mind and touching something deep within you, leave a like to help others discover this message. Stay with me now as we bring these insights together in a way that could truly transform how you approach discipline from this day forward. Viktor Frankl once wrote, "Between stimulus and response there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom." This perhaps is the ultimate insight about discipline. It exists in that sacred space between what happens to us and how we respond. True discipline isn't forcing yourself to respond in a particular way. It's expanding that space to allow meaning to guide your choices. When you struggle with discipline, you're not failing at willpower. You're being invited into a deeper conversation with yourself about what truly matters. Your resistance isn't an obstacle to overcome. It's a messenger pointing toward disconnection from purpose. The concentration camp survivor who became one of history's greatest psychologists didn't just give us a theory about meaning, he lived it. After losing everyone he loved, and witnessing unimaginable suffering, Frankl chose not bitterness but service. He chose not despair but creation. He chose to transform his suffering into purpose by helping others find meaning, even in their darkest moments. His legacy challenges us to ask, what will you do with your suffering? What meaning will you create from your struggles? What discipline will naturally emerge when you connect your daily actions to your deepest purposes? The paradox, Frankl discovered, is that the more we pursue happiness directly, the more it eludes us. But when we dedicate ourselves to a cause greater than ourselves or surrender to a loved one, happiness arrives as an unintended consequence. The same is true for discipline. The more we chase it through willpower and control, the more it slips away. But when we connect our actions to meaning, discipline arrives as a natural expression of purpose. Remember the bricklayers. Both were laying bricks, but only one was building a cathedral. What cathedral are you building with your life? What meaning makes your disciplines not burdens to bear, but expressions of who you truly are? As Frankl wrote in his final days, everyone has his own specific vocation or mission in life. Everyone must carry out a concrete assignment that demands fulfillment. Therein he cannot be replaced, nor can his life be repeated. Thus, everyone's task is unique, as is his specific opportunity to implement it. Your disciplines aren't separate. From this unique mission, they're how you embody it day by day, choice by choice, moment by moment. When you understand this, 25 minutes of connecting with purpose truly can transform your discipline forever. Not because you've found some magical technique, but because you've remembered who you are and what you're here to do. This is the ultimate freedom that Frankl discovered. Even when everything else is taken from us, we retain the freedom to choose our attitude toward our circumstances. And in that choice lies our dignity, our humanity, and yes, our discipline. As we conclude this journey through Frankl's wisdom, I invite you to take one action today. Identify one discipline you've struggled with and ask not, how can I force myself to do this? But what meaning might be waiting to be discovered here? In that question lies the beginning of transformation. If these words have touched something deep within you, if you sense that connecting discipline to meaning might be the key you've been seeking, leave your mark with a like so that others searching for purpose can discover this message. Subscribe now and activate notifications to receive regular doses of wisdom that illuminate rather than instruct, that invite rather than impose. Share in the comments the word purpose to affirm our collective journey toward meaning-centered living. Your unique experience might inspire thousands of others in our community, perhaps even shape a future video that answers your deepest questions. Tell us in the comments what gives your life meaning and how it connects to your disciplines. Your authentic story could be the cathedral that helps another builder find their way. Together, let's create a community that doesn't just pursue discipline, but embodies purpose, transforming not just our habits, but our lives, and perhaps, as Frankl would wish, our world.